Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the One of Us podcast. Today we are finishing off our dating series. I know you're all so sad, but today is going to be kind of fun. We're going to be finishing off by addressing some of your guys' lingering questions on dating, kind of some fun ones, some interesting ones, some different ones that we haven't discussed previously, and then the big bulk of the episode is going to be reacting to your worst date stories. So I'm really excited for that. You'll get to hear some of our worst date stories, just reacting, saying if some things are green flags, red flags, yellow flags, or anything in between. So let's start us off. So we'll start with some of the questions. My first one that I have for you guys is, how would you define relationship goals in quotations? You know how sometimes people see a couple and they're like, oh my gosh, relationship goals or power couple. Like, what exactly does that mean? And what attributes are people attributing, I guess, to that phrase?
I would say I think it varies for each person based on what they want for themselves, but I think the biggest thing that couples look for, or single people when they're looking at couples look for, are two people that are choosing to do life with one another. For me, that's relationship goals. You want to come on a trip with me? Awesome. You want to go have a Bible study date at the park? Those are goals for me. Things like that, wanting to grow with me, wanting to do life with me and choosing to, not because they have to, but because they want to. So I think there's a lot, I'm sure people can get into specifics like this or that, but I think the foundational thing is being able to have someone to do life with.
No, I like that. I see what you mean by it just really depends on what people value. When they see something emulated that they value, they're like, okay, like I see you guys, I see that.
I think adding a Christian element to it when you see that it is a God-centered relationship, I think that's a huge one. I just recently watched the Love is Blind UK and I was trying to think of like my favorite couples.
Okay, sorry, Tati. I saw the previews for that. It is so funny. Sorry, I had to make a quote and just say something, but continue.
Have you watched it?
I've seen the clips, but I want to watch it because it just looks too good. Sorry, I had to. That's just a quick shout out.
Yeah, and like obviously it's not Christian, but I think one of the things I've noticed is my favorite couples are like the ones where you know that you like no one, even other potential people that they were talking to, can break the relationship. And I was like, dang, those are the ones that are going strong. So I guess for me that's what it is. And it was interesting without spoiling it, because it's interesting that sometimes the family issues can actually be a reason why relationships make or break it. But yeah, like it's something that you both have to choose each other and really fight for in the relationship. So for me, that's kind of what I think of and kind of look for.
So what I'm hearing, it's really about like teamwork, loyalty, that thing, like we're in it to win it. This is us kind of against the world, and then also just seeing like a beautiful representation of a Christian relationship is kind of relationship goals. And I think that's so true. And I forget who I was telling this the other day, but Paul, when he says like be imitators of me, like that can be a good thing, right? When you're like imitating something that's good, not in a comparative way or trying to be someone that you're not, but in a way of like, when you see someone doing something that is like good and godly and biblical, you're like, wow, that's great. Like that is what I want to emulate, right? That's the kind of person I want to be. So that's really awesome. Kind of switching up gears a little bit. What are your guys' thoughts on purity rings? That's a question that we got. What are your guys' thoughts? I know some of us have done that, or if not all of us. So what are our thoughts or perspectives?
I personally don't care for the purity rings. I don't think they're bad. If you do it, show it proud, awesome. For me, I don't need the ring isn't what holds me accountable. Some people might use it for a reminder, or they like to help use it accountable, or maybe they use it as a way to start conversations. Whatever your reason, whatever your motive, that's awesome. Me personally, I'm not a huge fan of the purity rings just because, I don't know, I've just never been a huge fan. It's kind of like the promise ring where I don't need an object to hold me accountable. I have my friends, I have my community, I have God and the spirit within me to hold me accountable. So I'm not a huge fan of it, but I'm not dogging on it.
I think honestly, it doesn't really matter. I would argue if you feel that you need a reminder, that's actually a really good source to have on you to kind of remind you when things get heated because it's a slippery slope, right? We've talked about how physical interaction with your significant other can lead down a path that you don't really want to take. So I think it's cool personally because it could be a good conversation starter, but it's not necessary for, I guess, purity. But I think it's cool.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to say. It's whatever is beneficial or helpful to the person, not necessary. And I know it became like a fad for a little bit there, but just whatever is helpful, I guess, to you as a reminder of what you're doing, who you're doing it for, and who you belong to. So, this is the real question. This is what our audience was saying. Do you guys think chivalry is dead? And also, just attached to that, is chivalry a biblical concept?
I mean, it depends who you really hang out with. I think if you're engaging in a community where people don't really value the word of God, or maybe it's more you're hanging out with a group that's more culturally sensitive. I know right now there's a big push for all roles to be simultaneous, and that could be a podcast in itself.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily dead. I just don't think it's common. And I do think it's sad because, like, for example, there's a friend I was hanging out with last week, and every single time I see him, he walks me to my car and he opens up my car door. And that's not something I normally see. So when he does do it, I'm like, oh, this isn't normal. And even when I was in Reno, people opening my doors, maybe it's just like the LA culture, it's not as common. So I do think where you are does kind of affect the culture around you. I don't know how it is like in the East Coast or in the South. It's probably way different than here. So, fun little fact though, kind of related, kind of not. There was a statistic that said that LA is one of the worst places to date.
Why?
It's just harder to find a person. Let me actually read. I posted it on my story today. Let me read what it actually says. It says a new study ranked Los Angeles as one of the worst cities in the US for dating. High divorce rates, poor quality of life, low likelihood of marriage, and I guess 6 other key factors that they did on the major 20 cities. So, pray for me, y'all. Rough out here.
I'll maybe tie in some Bible verses, but I do not think chivalry is dead. I do agree with Tati, and maybe I could be wrong. If I am, by all means, put it in the comments. I feel like location does kind of play a factor, but as you guys were talking, I was looking up some Bible verses that came to mind. The first one is Proverbs 12:4. An excellent wife is the crown of her husband, but she who brings shame is like rottenness in his bones. And kind of going on with chivalry, a guy that's chivalrous, he wants to show that respect. He wants to take care of her. And in the opposite way, a good woman, a wife, will do that for her husband. And I have a verse that shows this one. It says, she makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. And some might look at that verse and ask, what does that mean? Because of the way that she presents herself, holds herself, and the way that she holds and protects and cares for her family, it shows the respect that she also has for her family and her husband. So I do feel that chivalry is still a thing, and I do think that the Bible talks about it. It doesn't use the word chivalry outright. Proverbs is just a good one in general, because when I thought of chivalry, immediately, my mind goes to men, but I think women play a factor in it as well.
And I think it's really all about like outdoing one another and showing honor, right? And I think that's exactly what chivalry is. It's just showing honor and respect. And I think it can go both ways as well.
Yeah, so the actual definition kind of goes back to medieval times. It's just a combination of qualities like being courageous, honorable, being courtesy, fighting for justice. And I think the most important one is helping the weak. So I think if those qualities, which honestly is kind of funny if you think about those qualities, I think Jesus emulated those qualities perfectly. I think that if you are a Christian, especially a male that is seeking to, I guess, be sanctified in the image of Christ every day, it's important to kind of move in that direction. But I kind of like what Vic is saying. Chivalry isn't really mentioned in the Bible, rather just how you are supposed to act as a human being towards another human being. But I do think that there's a famous verse, 1 Peter 3:7. It's mainly talking to husbands, but it says like, likewise husbands live in an understanding way, showing honor to the women as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. So I think 1 Peter 3:7 kind of summarizes chivalry perfectly. It's kind of stating how we're supposed to take care of our significant other in a honorable way, right? And I want to highlight weaker vessel because a lot of people think weaker vessel means less worth, or weaker as in their not as strong as men, but how I guess the language doesn't do the verse justice. How I always been explained to it is like how Peter's trying to describe the female is like, imagine a beautiful vase, right? That houses flower. It's like delicate, it has to be taken care of. You're not just like willy-nilly throwing that vase around the house. You're like taking care of it, you're putting clean water, you're washing it, you're putting new flowers in there, compared to I guess like a man who, I guess our church pastor, he said this funny thing where he said the guys are more like that Home Depot orange bucket you see, that it can just be tossed around really willy-nilly. So I think that in the aspect of chivalry, that's kind of where I think most men who are desiring a wife should kind of act towards.
Okay, I like it. They're offering some biblical perspective on that. And then we had a question on flirting. So, what do you think about flirting in the Christian context?
I think if you're playing games, don't do it. I think that's kind of childish and it's a worldly cultural perspective, especially if you're an adult. Actually, if you're just a Christian in general, you should just not be. I guess when I think of flirting, I think of it as like you're trying to play this game that you're interested and you're playing like 4D chess. Like, just don't do that. Just, I feel if you are engaging in friendships and you're a guy and you feel led to court somebody, that you should just make it known. And that's why I always advocate for everyone being friends, because if you go to the next step of trying to court someone and it kind of, you get rejected, at least you still have a wonderful friend that you made. So I say no flirting.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we've talked about in the past. It's like, what's your intention? And I think most of us here agree that I guess we all like to take it slow and just make sure that the compatibility is there instead of just jumping into it because they look attractive or whatever. So yeah, it's the intention behind it. And I think that flirting can still break hearts and you could definitely lead people on, unfortunately. And that's my 2 cents.
I agree with Tati and Juan what they've said. Flirting is kind of a dangerous game, and not everyone's motives in flirting are pure. Just stay away from it. If you like someone, just be straight. Hey, I like you. Don't play any games. Just be forward. Make it super easy. Make it super simple for yourself.
Well, flirting to its purest definition is teasing to show like that you're romantically interested. And I don't think there's anything wrong with like, I guess, being funny and teasing, but I think if you're using that to lead your romantic prospect, I think that's wrong.
Okay, and it's kind of along those lines. How does a guy show interest? And some tips. We got some people wanting some tips.
Juan, this is all you, brother.
Basically, what you do is you buy them a ticket to watch Coneheads and you sit there in dead silent. And if she stays for the whole movie, she's the one.
For those of you who don't know, that's my parents' first date.
Wait, I didn't catch it. What movie?
Coneheads.
Okay, but that's kind of a funny movie.
If she commits to the whole movie, that's when you know.
I was just kidding. Honestly, I think it just depends on the situation. I think if you've listened to our full dating series, you'd know that we think the first correct step before engaging in a courtship is formulating a friendship, right? Building that friendship. And I think through friendship, you can know the other person and the other person can know you, and you can discern with the Holy Spirit if you feel called to enter a courtship with another person. Now, I do think that this was a hot take that we all discussed, whether we think a girl can make it known that they're interested. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I would say that there is a dangerous risk you play of enabling certain characteristics in a guy that can be not them taking initiative to lead in the relationship. But what I would say is, how does a guy show interest? So I guess from that perspective, I think most girls understand if a guy's just constantly creating opportunities to hang out. I think that should be a sign of interest. So, but what I would say ultimately, if you feel that you know the person really well and you've discerned with the Holy Spirit that you want to enter a courtship with somebody, then you should just shoot your shot and be transparent with the person. Let them know that you're growing feelings, that you've prayed about it, that you spoke to the Lord, and this is the area you feel like. And what I would encourage any brother in Christ is to not be discouraged by rejection or be discouraged if the other person needs time to digest that information. What I would say say is don't wait forever. I know there's a lot of guys out there who've shot their shot and they've been at the end where a girl doesn't give them a response for months on end. I think that if somebody's not able to discern your question in a respectable manner, like if they're unable to respond, like if it's like months go on end and that's just like an elephant in the room, then I think you know your answer. That's a no. But I would just be transparent, honest, ask, tell them, and then just wait for the digestion of information. And if it goes well, hallelujah. And if not, then, you know, don't be discouraged. You did your best. And I guess it just wasn't the time or the person.
How long of a time frame do you maybe suggest the friend like era to be?
I guess shameless plug. If you saw, I think it was episode 3 or 4, we kind of talked about one of these questions on how long should someone date for. And I think ultimately it really depends. If you are really, I guess this question is more so like how long should you be friends before you date? But I think that kind of falls along the same as how long should you date before you get married. It's kind of depends on your age and how well you know the person and how many experiences you guys share. Like there's people that I know that have been friends for like 10 plus years, but they only see each other maybe a couple days throughout the year. I don't think that's a lot of exposure to really show you who that person is. But there's some people who they started dating someone after like 3 months, and honestly they spent every single waking hour with that other person, whether because of school or because they just worked with that person. But still, I think that question is just dependent on how exposed you are to the person. But I would argue that you should be friends long enough to ideally see how the person deals with adversity and how what's their response to when things don't go their way.
Okay. And down the same vein, we're going to begin to just react and respond to some of your guys' worst date stories and some of our own as well. So I'll start us off with this one by one of our followers. They said, I went to the movies with my ex boyfriend, and when it got cold, he put on his jacket and said, You should have brought yours. I thought he would offer his later, but he never did. He was not joking. Your guys' thoughts?
I think she should have brought a jacket. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So is this like a red flag? Is this a yellow flag? Is this a we need to know more?
Honestly, I had this conversation at work with one of my coworkers. I won't say any names, but one of my coworkers was kind of getting flamed. He was like getting roasted by my coworkers or colleagues who are female because he's apparently moving and his wife wants to build like a chicken coop because they bought a bunch of land. And he says no because he knows that his wife will inevitably not take care of the animals and he'll have to take care of the animals himself. And he's like, yeah, that's too much work for me and I don't want to do it. And I just remember one of my other colleagues was like, your wants should be her wants. Like that's what builds a healthy marriage. And I think in this experience, if you are with someone or you see someone show characteristics that doesn't show them being meek or show them caring about your needs as much as theirs, I think that could be telling that maybe their mind right now is stuck on them solely.
Yeah, I don't want to say it's a straight up red flag. I would say it's an orange flag in between yellow and red. Because I don't know, like, I personally wouldn't want to continue dating someone who does that. Because my perspective is, again, we all fall short from the glory of God, but I do want someone who is selfless and does put my needs above their needs and vice versa, of me putting their needs above mine. And I think that that was just a bit of a selfish thing to say, especially on a first date. Like, you're trying to have good
I
first
think
impressions.
she thought it was funny he at first. Like he was like, "Oh, you should have brought yours," and that he was gonna give it to hers later, but he never did.
I understand if it's like you forgot your jacket. Like if you, let's say the whole movie goes on, he puts on his jacket and he just never noticed because maybe he thought she brought one, or like sometimes people overlook things. But he actually noticed and said, dang, sucks for you. That's, I think, what pushes it over the edge.
I need more context because how old were they? Because I'm thinking if they're in their 20s, I'm gonna say, yeah, orange flag. You're a little bit older, should probably pick up on the cues that, hey, she's cold. Give her your jacket, help her out.
Or share your jacket.
Share it. Or, but here's the thing, let's say they're high school kids. I can't blame them because they're just high school kids. They might not, maybe pick up those cues. I don't mean to.
No. He did pick up though. He did pick up because he said, dang, you should have brought yours. So he knows that like she was cold.
But he probably wasn't picking up on the idea like, oh, hey, like this is like a really good opportunity for me to give my jacket. He hasn't learned the concept of chivalry.
Okay, Look, it's like if you saw someone hungry on the street, right? Like homeless, hungry, and you like walk out of Taco Bell and you're like, dang, you should go in there and buy one. And then you just get in your car and leave.
The self-awareness is just not there. It's just not there.
It's kind of funny. Honestly, I would just, if I was, I'd say the girl should be like, hey, this date didn't work out. I understand you were cold too, but I'm looking for someone who is more aware, I guess, of my needs, and just leave it at that.
Or I probably would have been like, bro, I'm asking you for your jacket. Help me out, please. I'm cold.
I don't know. Personally, I would not have to like want to blatantly tell the guy that I'm dating to do the right thing. Like he should already know. Because then you're going to have to do that for the rest of the relationship. You're going to have to constantly keep over communicating those things. That's just my 2 cents though.
What a man. We need to go find him and ask him.
They need to have like a class to teach men how to understand some social cues.
Okay, next one. This one I thought was kind of funny. It's a little bit longer, so everyone just buckle up for this one. So he says, organized a date with this gorgeous girl while I was at the surf club. Call for a rescue goes off, and I'm running off to do my thing. So it sounds like maybe he was like a lifeguard or something. Pull this older guy from the water. He is not in great shape and has stopped breathing. I start doing CPR and the whole works. 10 minutes later, and the ambulance takes him away. At the date, she wanted to know if I was gay or bi. I had to explain to her what CPR was, that I wasn't attracted to the person, and that it's to try and save a life. Nope, she wasn't buying it. I was clearly gay for drowned men.
Red flag. He dodged a bullet. He dodged a bullet. Yeah, he'll be okay without her. Can you imagine? Okay, so you know how there's like this new thing going around? Here are my icks. And you know how people have made lists like, oh, if he drives with his left hand, that's an ick. And so then this guy creates
Is
a
that
list.
person okay?
No, it's just like a dumb thing, but this guy, he'll watch these videos of these girls saying these are their icks, and he has a list on his notes, and he's scrolling, and there are 300 things, and then you just see him typing, do not drive with left hand.
There's a girl that does that with having kids too, so that's probably where they got it from.
Exactly.
Well, this is what I would say to this whole situation. I know we're talking about funny dating stories, but ultimately just be yourself. I think if you're yourself, the desire of your heart's to be with someone and you pray about it and you knock on the door, I believe the Lord will answer and find you someone who accepts you for who you are. But I think in this situation, I don't think she could see past the fact that his job was to help someone who was in need. And I think that was just too much for her. And I think if she couldn't accept that, I guess that's a loss for her. And he shouldn't feel bad about it being going downhill.
I think it was probably ignorance too. Like, she clearly did not understand the concept of CPR.
But where is she from? Because almost every school teaches CPR in middle school. Unless this girl was not in middle school.
Obviously, she had to have been a middle school girl. She probably was homeschooled.
Okay, but movies, TV shows, like,
Who knows?
like was she Amish?
Shout out if you're Amish listening to this. Let me know if you know about CPR. Okay, the next one. In college, we were supposed to have a coffee date. He arrived late. The conversation was torture because he didn't want to talk. He looked distracted. I asked him why. He said his buddies were drinking in his dorm and he wanted to go drink with them. I said, cool, you don't have to stay. He left. The end.
Dude, okay, honestly, I can respect the honesty on both ends, but that's rough. There's nothing else to say.
My question would be, why did you show up?
Yeah, why couldn't you just be like, hey, like, I forgot I had some things planned with some buddies. Can we move it to another day?
Maybe he was peer pressured or it was like a blind date or something. He was honest. Am I that honest to people? Absolutely not. I would never say, actually, I don't want to be here with you. I would suck it up, continue with the date.
I think that was a good conclusion. I feel like if you're talking to someone, she realized something was wrong, told them what the heck's happening. He was honest, she was honest, and it ended.
Okay, can I share a story?
No.
I have 2 stories. I feel like I have my worst date story, and I feel like I am the person of someone's worst date story.
Probably.
Okay, I will share this story. It was my second date in high school with the first guy who had ever asked me out. And I'm pretty sure if he was asked this question, this is the story he would share about his worst date, and I am the guilty person. So, mind you, we're young, so he picks me up and he's like, hey, we're going hiking. I'm thinking, cool. He tells me, super easy hike. Now, at the time, I did not work out. I was a pretty lazy bum, and I would go out and I would hike, but they were like little walking trails, little things, okay? So he told me it was easy, so I was like, no biggie, whatever. He picks me up, he buys us food at Porta Subs to have a picnic at the freaking top of this rock. We get there. This is a freaking mountain. This is not a walking trail. I literally was scaling a wall. Now, mind you, we have like 2 or 3 bags. He carries all the bags, and he only asked me to carry his jacket. So I tied it around my waist. He was literally pulling me up, and he was a very patient guy. This man, thank you for your patience. We finally get to the top. I am so out of breath. I am done. I am tired, and I'm now sick. So he's like, hey, let's eat our food. And I told him, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm not hungry. So I didn't eat that sandwich, so it ended up going to waste. We're sitting at the top of this rock, and he does this thing. I'm cold. And what do? I go, well, dang, I carried your jacket all the way up here, and I tossed it in his lap. That's why I say I don't think teenagers can always read the cues. Or maybe it's just me. I don't know.
You were speaking from personal experience.
I was speaking from personal experience, okay? So after this, we go back down, and it's like maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. He's like, hey, I know a great place where we can look at the stars, do all this stuff. You want to go? And I was like, no, my parents want me home. And that was that. And honestly, I actually have a follow-up bad date, but we'll save that for another time. But yeah, I don't know why this guy kept asking me out on dates, because they just weren't good.
Is this a red flag? An orange flag? A yellow flag?
Red flag doesn't seem interested or seems to care.
I'd say red flag too.
She shows up for the vibes and the free food.
Hey, I wanted to. After that, I was just so done. I just wanted to go home.
Vic, you're like a combination of all of the ones we just said.
No.
You're like that guy who said, I just want to go.
Well, at least I didn't say that. I came up with an excuse like, hey, like,
You're the jacket guy who just didn't get it.
I literally am all those people in one. But that was 17-year-old me. We've changed.
We'll give you a pass.
I think if you really liked him, you would not care if your parents wanted you home.
I think my parents were happy that I was gone, because when I came through the door, they asked me, what are you doing? I said, I'm home. And they told me it's 8 o'clock. I said, yeah, I was tired. And my parents were like, Victoria, why? That was it. I think they wanted me out of the house. They were probably like, please take this girl out as long as you freaking want.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Ta, I'm gonna pass the baton to you.
All right. I have not gone on many dates, but there was one I could not do any more dates with this man. Long story short, exposing myself. I was on TikTok and I saw that